Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Hello and welcome to Alan Heath Sessions. Today is Q. I'm your host, Keith. So it says my name here somewhere. There we go. And we are answering all of your questions on the Alan Heath Q series. So if you do have any questions, please post them. Otherwise, it'll be a very short session. But all of these sessions, if you haven't seen them before, welcome. All of these sessions are about helping you guys get the most out of your mixes. We're doing ones on SQ. We're doing ones on Q. We're doing Zone DJ, and we're also doing Avantis and DLive. So keep an eye out for those. We are all of the previous ones and future ones should be featured on our events page. And the link comes in magically. Whoa, look at that. So you can check there, keep an eye on that, and see if there's anything coming up which interests you. See, we've got some people joining already. Hi, town musicians. Good morning from Fla, which is that Florida? Is that Florida? I don't know what else it could be. And Ricardo from Brazil. Hello and welcome. So if you do have any questions, please do post them in the chat. We're live on YouTube and Facebook, so hello Facebook and YouTube. And I can see all of your comments here, so I will try and get around to as many as possible. To start with, it is Florida. Yes. Buenos dias. Here you go. In Mexico. So I'm just really pleased with myself now, really chuffed. There's a couple that I'm going to start with. Anthony's here. Hello. There's a couple I'm going to start with, which I've just found online in the past week or so, couple of weeks, which will just kind of get us going and maybe prompt some other questions from you guys. But I thought these ones are something that's easier to show than just to talk about in text. You know, when you're trying to describe something to somebody with words, it can be really tricky rather than just being able to point out stuff. So I thought I'd cover those first. So the first one is to do with DCAs and how somebody was using them on the queue, or whether they could use DCAs. I'll try and explain what they were asking first. So what they were saying was, how is the post fade working? So they're coming from an analog background. How does the post fade work? Why is it that when I move the main fader, it's not also affecting the auxiliary outputs? So the thing there is that the auxiliary outputs are kind of in parallel with the main output. You can think of your main output as your master faders, and the send levels from each of the input channels are like the faders on an analog desk. Then the output faders, like the left-right main, and also the master fader strip for all of the auxes, that's just your master send level. So they're not going to interact. But also, when we talk about pre-fader and post-fader, we're always talking about the fader position in the main LR mix, rather than any of the auxes or anywhere else. So where DCAs come into this is if you need one fader or a couple of faders that can control multiple levels at once, you can use DCA. So if I jump over to this screen, DCAs, you can find the masters for the DCAs here on the Q pack. If you're on, let's go over to this screen. If you're on a Q with a surface with faders, then the Q16 doesn't actually have it, and that's why I picked this one to show. On the Q24, Q32, you'll see some DCA faders in this second layer. The top layer there. You probably can't see my cursor. Hang on. Let's point it out. So they'll be over this way somewhere. If you can, over in this direction. But obviously they can't fit in on the Q16. But the Q16 does still have DCAs. That was kind of the point I was trying to make. And that's accessed through the custom layer. So if you imagine this is that's your inputs, that's your mixes and stereo inputs and mixes. And then in the middle there, we've got our custom layer, which is accessed by pressing both of those keys at the same time, and is set up, if I go over here, by going to Setup, Control, and Custom Layer. So if I was on a Q16, now the keypack's kind of similar in a way because it's only got the 16 select keys on the front, so you've only got 16 channel strips, if you like. So I'd probably put it right at the end, actually. So I'll put it on 16. I can just scan through these. There we go, DCAs. So let's say I want to use DCA 1. That's going to be my 16th fader on Q16. You can put it anywhere on the custom layer. And then what I'm going to do is go to routing, and I'm going to select any of the input channels, and I'm going to go to the mute DCA group assigns, and I can assign any of these channels now to a DCA. So I've got channel 1 selected, which you can see at the top left, and I can assign that to DCA 1. Hang on a minute. And then if I go here, group assign, I can then start assigning these as well. So I could do a load in one go if I wanted to, or I could do them one by one. So you could assign inputs to the DCA, but you can also assign mixes. So if you wanted one fader, as this person did, to control multiple outputs, because they didn't have matrices, they're using a Q16 which doesn't have the matrices, so they were using 2 mixes so that they could put delays on the second lot of speakers. But you could still use a DCA then to control the level of both of those mix outputs in a relative way. So you could still set them individually and then use one DCA fader to pull them up or down. So you can assign the inputs here, or you can go over here and say, let's use that one and that one. Perfect. So it's pretty much as easy as that. Now that that's assigned, so I can see that I've just got those 2 mixes assigned. If I go back to my channels, which would be my custom layer, and I've got my DCA here, got my DCA level, I can now use one fader, obviously I'm doing this on the keypack, to control both of those levels. Something to note there is that you're not going to see the faders actually move up and down. They'll stay in their relative positions. So you could say have the main speakers in this particular situation. You could have the main speakers at 0 dB, and then you could have the ones further back minus 10 dB. So when the DCA fader is at 0 at unity, that's what the levels would be, 0 and minus 10. If you then pulled the DCA fader down by 10 dB, you'd get the front ones would be at minus 10 and the rear ones would be at minus 20, and so on and so forth. So it's like a multiplication of the 2 of them. So it's all connected. Let's see if we've got any more questions coming in now. If you do have any questions, please do post them, as I say. What have we got so far? How do I link? Brian's asking, how do I link my Matrix LR 31 band EQs together? Oh, so you want to, hang on, let me think. This might require me to use my brain, which is never good in the afternoons. I'll have a sip of tea. So how do I link my Matrix LR 31 band EQs together? So Matrix is a mix of mixes. So any processing that you do on the mix that you're sending to the Matrix will appear in that matrix as well. So you could use the graphic EQ that you've got on your left, right, if you're sending that to multiple, if you're sending it to both sets of matrices, and that would affect everything. Or you could have separate GEQs on one matrix, one stereo matrix, and the other stereo matrix. So if you had, say, one was going out for a stream, you might want to EQ that completely differently to something that's going for a recording, or for somewhere else in the room, or to a center fill, for example. So it's either the 2 separate or the single one that you've got on the left, right. If you wanted to EQ just the room, then you would use a matrix for the room and use a matrix for the record, and you could use the left, right clean for a record, for example. So it's just a case of moving those around as you want them. There's no way to link the GEQs on matrix 1 and 2 and matrix 3 and 4 outputs because they are separate mixes. There is one way around that if you really, really needed to do that, which would be to use MIDI, because you could control those via MIDI, and you would have to send pairs of messages. So you'd have to receive messages and then send out a pair of messages to link them. It is tricky, but if you desperately need to do that, just give us a shout using support.alan-heath.com, and we're always happy to talk MIDI because it's really fun. The city's here. Hello. Hi from Cornwall, but in Ontario. Wow, that's cool. Look at that. Victor's in the other Cornwall, which is just across the Atlantic there, just over there. Wonderful, welcome. Good night from Indonesia. I can't. I'm really bad with time zones, actually. Just everything all the time. Never sleep. Cincinnati, representatives from Cincinnati, Ohio. Hi, Eric. Is there a way? Oh, this is a good question. This comes up sometimes, so I should answer this one. Is there an easy way to remotely control the cue from a computer like you can with the SQ? Ben, there's no way to run the QPad app on a computer, so on a Mac or a PC, and that's because it was built for with iOS native, so it's like it's a native app to iOS. At the time when we started it all off with Q, that was absolutely the best option, the most secure option. So it wasn't built kind of cross-platform; it was just iOS, same as some of our other older apps. There is a good option though in Mixing Station. So Mixing Station is a third-party app that works with our consoles, including SQ and Q and GLD off the top of my head, and maybe Avantis now. And that's a third-party application that runs on PC and Mac and Android and iOS. And it's slightly different, but yes, that would be the easiest way to control it remotely. And again, there's MIDI that you can use, but I wouldn't say that's particularly easy. It's a wondrous rabbit hole of pain and joy all at once is MIDI. Hello, Willie. Using dSnake. How do I? So Scott's asking a question. Let's see if we can do Scott's question quickly. Using the dSnake, how do I change the main out LNR to be run through the dSnake as an Auxes return? Okay, so you can patch. Okay, so you can patch any of the mix outputs to dSnake quite simply by going to setup. IO patch dSnake out, and then any expanders, I haven't got any connected, any expanders you've got connected will show up there. So at the moment, when you're saying with the Auxes or the mixes, by default, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 are going to be patched from mixes, but you could change any of those you like to LR. So you just touch on them, flip through, and you can have LR, you can have LR pre, and you can have L plus R as well. So you can have a mono if you want to do a mono output or pre. So if you wanted a mono output for, I don't know, a center speaker or for a single sub, you could do that. But if you just want to match what the LR on the back of the unit is sending, it's LRL. And if you press the +1 here, handy little tip, you can get the next one along straight away. So that'll give you it on 1 and 2. Hopefully that answers your question. I'm not quite sure I understood it correctly, so I'm very sorry if I didn't. Okay, if I have an AB... Ben says, if I have an AB68 plugged into the dSnake, can I plug Mies into the expander port? Yes, you can. So you can connect Mies directly to the dSnake port. You can connect it from the expander port of an AB16.8. You can connect it from the expander port of a daisy chain 16.8. So if you had two 16.8s in a row, you could still connect a Mii on the end of it. You can also connect it from the monitor port of an AR2412. And you can connect it from the expander port of an AB16.8 that's been connected to the expander port of an AR2412. I think I nailed that one. Pretty pleased with myself again. But yes, pretty much anywhere there's a dSnake output port on the end of something, you can connect it up. I can't think of any exceptions. Or you can also do the expander port of an AR2412. So anytime there's a dSnake output port, you can connect to me. I think that's right. Don't think there's any. No. Alberto says, How can I put a Matrix output to my Cubase DAW to make a stereo master recording? Good question, Alberto. I like it. So let's say you're connecting directly with USB. Presume you're connecting directly with USB. You haven't said whether you're using a Mac or PC. With Mac, it's class compliant, so your cue will just show up automatically. With PC, you want to install the ASIO drivers, the WDM and ASIO drivers. The WDM side of that is mainly for working with Windows system sounds and any applications that don't use ASIO. ASIO kind of it accesses the interface directly, so it's much lower latency. There's only one connection at a time with that, but that shouldn't matter. So I'd say with Cubase, let's say it's Cubase on a PC, install the ASIO drivers, connect it up with USB-B, make sure you can see everything. That's the first thing. And then we're almost in the right screen already. In your setup IO patch USB out, you'll see everything that you can patch from the queue to USB-B or actually to Q drive. So it uses the same patch. By default, and that is the default patch there, 17 and 18, so USB channels 17 and 18 have already got the left-right mix, so that main out. But if you wanted to change that, let's say you just want to change 17 and 18 to use a matrix, you just touch on those, and I'd say matrix 1, and then you use the little +1 again, matrix 2, hit apply. Can I do that? Yeah, I could do that here. It's not going to break anything. Great. And there we go. So I would then record from 17 and 18. If I wanted to do it on 1 and 2, because I just had inputs 1 and 2 that I wanted to use on the computer for whatever reason, or in fact, you can connect up a queue because it's class compliant to something like an iPad or a phone with the correct connection kit. So the camera connection kit for iOS, for example, it will only pick up the first 2 channels. So if you wanted to do a stream, like I'm doing now, for example, from a queue, you could use channels 1 and 2. So if I wanted to use the matrix outs on 1 and 2 for that, I would do that. And now anything I send in the mixer to matrix 1 and 2 will go to my device I've got connected or my DAW or whatever on channels 1 and 2. So I can pick that up and send it wherever I want. Easy peasy. That's an interesting question. Let's try and tackle it. Is the Avantis mixer better for sound quality than the Q32 mixer, and does it have more outputs for in-ears? Well, there's a big difference in the processing. So the Avantis uses XCVI core, which means that everything is in one chip. It's also using, it's also running at 96K. It's got up to 96-bit for the accumulator bus. So it's a very different system, really. I know they're both digital, but yes, the kind of how far you're jumping up, the very different mixes are they're very different price ranges as well. And there are a lot more mixes on Avantis as well. So there's 42 assignable mixes on the Avantis, which you can do with whatever you like, pretty much. So you can assign them to be lots of mono mixes if you want to do, or lots of stereo mixes. So when you're talking about in-ears, you could assign a whole bunch of those to run stereo mixes. Whereas on the Q, it's a bit more fixed. So we've got the mono mixes and then some stereo mixes, but they're not linkable or splittable. So yes, I guess is the answer to the question. But it's also, yes, quite a bit more of an investment for quite a lot more mixer. So seems fair. Okay, let's see if we've got another one. Oh, yeah, no. Anthony's already answered the questions on the Me system. I was really proud of myself, but he had already got there first. Douglas Edwards is asking, any NAMM releases on SQ1 or new rack mixer? We can't ever talk about future releases, I'm afraid, until they're out. Some things happen, some things don't happen. So we never announce something, because it'd be incredibly embarrassing if we announced something and then it didn't happen. So we just don't. I'm afraid it seems boring, I know, but we can never talk about future things. But we're always working on new stuff. So yeah, I'd love to see something like that. Have to be, yeah. Oh, look, Anthony's answered that one as well. I can just drink my tea. This is great. Funnily enough, I did answer this a minute ago before I'd seen it, but I will answer it directly, Simon. There is not a way to separate the stereo mixes. So the mono mixes and the stereo mixes exist as fixed format, like either mono or stereo mixes throughout the mixer, in the engine, in the processing and everything else. So you can't combine those or split them apart. With some of our other products, that is possible, but unfortunately not with the Q. Okay, let's see the use Avantis. So this is, oh, I'm going to cough. Hang on. There we go. This isn't a Q question, but I am. Oh no, hang on. Anthony might have answered it. Yes, I'm not going to answer it in the Q stream because Anthony saved the day. Thank you very much, sir. Okay. Anymore? I want to go for with Streamdeck. Ooh, that's a cool question as well. So Victor would like to control a few functions on the Q24 with a Streamdeck. Many MU groups. What do I need on my PC to connect the Streamdeck MIDI commands to the Q24? So there's a couple of ways of doing this, Victor. There is the BitFocus Companion software. Is it software? Is it a server? I don't know. It's kind of like a little server thing that you can download. So if you search BitFocus Companion, that works with Streamdeck. And that can use the MIDI commands. There's some modules already built in there that you can then use to just pick the functions of the keys in the same way as you would with Streamdeck normally, if you like. You can also use just the Streamdeck stuff. So you can use any kind of packet sender to send MIDI messages. And there is a guide for that. Let me see if I can quickly find it for you. Just to comment yourselves quickly for a second. There's a guide for that for dLive that Jack put together, but it's pretty much the same thing. Here we go. So it's the same concept as this, except using the Q MIDI messages. And the Q MIDI messages, Q MIDI protocol. I'll see, people have mentioned MIDI too much now, and I'm getting excited about MIDI. And there's the Q MIDI protocol. Okay. Oh, very interesting. Somebody with an issue with multitrack recording. So Roel had an issue with multitrack recording with 7th generation laptop through Reaper as a robotic sound. Is it already sold in the new firmware? As I believe Anthony has also answered that one as well. Thank you so much. Yes, it's to do with USB isochronous transfer. It can also be to do with the XHCI, XHX, the host controller, basically. So USB 3 and USB 2. So Q is USB 2. If the USB 3 should be fully backwards compatible. If it's not fully backwards compatible, and it doesn't fully support isochronous transfer, there can be issues. The main things to do are make sure that there's nothing else on that USB bus. So there's not like an internal, which we've seen quite a few times. If there's like an internal Wi-Fi card, that might be sharing that same USB bus and interrupting the transfer. And with isochronous transfer, to explain very briefly, because I'm definitely not an expert on it, it's sending lots and lots of data very quickly, which is what allows us to do what we do with the audio and with the MIDI, and to have so many channels and going in both directions. But what it doesn't do is wait and send stuff. So it just sends it, and there are buffers at either end, and it does receive it. But if there's any problems with that stream, so if it's interrupted at the computer end by power settings, or by going through a hub, or by being, like I say, network stuff, working on that same bus internally, then there can be problems. So there's lots of different reasons for it. It's not kind of a fix where it's fixed in the firmware and that's it. But you can contact us and we'll be more than happy to go through it with you and see if we can figure anything. But the main thing, yes, do definitely get the latest firmware. There have been changes and improvements on our end where we've messed around with buffers and the things that we can do at our end to improve it. So make sure you're running the latest firmware. Make sure you're running the latest drivers. Make sure you're connecting directly to the USB port, not through any hub. Make sure you're using a lead that's good enough, because we have seen that a few times where somebody's used a rubbish lead. They've changed the lead and it's fine. What else is there? Power settings. I'm trying to think of all the main basic ones. Power settings on the port, so it's not shutting down the power and doing power saving stuff. That's probably about it. And if you're still having trouble, then just give us a shout using support.alan-heath.com. Okay, right, cool. Let's go on to quickly the other. Oh, Samuel's got a good question, which I will get to in a second, Samuel. The other quick one I wanted to cover was a routing main output message that I spotted on our digital community this afternoon. So it's from somebody called Rocketman. And it says, I'm curious, I run sound from the stage. We don't use a dSnake, we just plug directly into the board. It's a small setup. Is there a way I could route a copy of the main outputs to a monitor mix channel so I could hear it in my IEMs, just as a reference? I still walk out front and listen. So this is about getting the main mix in your IEMs so that you can be checking the full mix. And there's definitely an easy way to do that. So if we look at the back, jump back over to this screen. Let's get rid of all my squiggles on that one and that one. So on the rear of the unit, and the rear of pretty much any of the Qs other than the QSB, there is an alt out. And then on the top, so this alt out is controlled on the top by, if my thing's working, that control there. So you've got an analog control for the output, or a very quick hands-on control for the output. And what the alt out's really useful for, this is where I mostly use it, is for IEMs and for the engineer IEMs, because just like where you've got the phones there for your local listening, you've got the alt out straight underneath. It's also really useful for things like streams and whatnot. But having that alt out means you can plug that alt out socket into your IEM system. And then if we go back over to here again, and we're still in this IO patch window, and we go to Surface, we can select what the alt out is. So if you then set that alt out to PAFL, which is then matching, you can't see the socket because I'm zoomed right in, but that's matching what the phone's output is sending. So what you can hear locally with headphones plugged in is now going to be the same on the alt out plugged into your IEM system. So that's one main thing. The other part of this is just to ensure in your audio screen that LR to PAFL is switched on. And that just means if you've not PAFL'd any channels, so pre or after fade listen. So if you're not listening to any individual channels, you'll hear the left-right mix. So I think that's probably the best way to set it up. The benefit of, as well as I've just mentioned, is with this setup, you can then, when you're checking stuff on the stage, is you could go around and hit PAFL on different inputs on your iPad that you're using to control it as you're wandering around, and you can jump in and quickly listen just for you to individual input channels, be able to check stuff, fix stuff, EQ stuff exactly the way you want. Okay, let's see if there's any more questions. So Samuel's question is, what's the best way to set up a Q32 for sound for live streaming for a concert or meeting? So it really depends. It depends if how important the sound is in the room as well. If you're it's live streaming for a concert or meeting, the Q could be running as just a broadcast mixer, so you could be taking a feed from somewhere else, like an SQ, for example. You can connect up the Q and the SQ using the S-Link port and the dSnake port, and you can send a bunch of channels to the Q and then just use the Q for your broadcast feed. If you're using the Q for the live show as well, then the two best options are, if it's one engineer, it's and the sound system's good in the room, then the easiest option is just to use a Matrix output if you've got one. So with the Q32, you've got a couple of Matrix outputs. So send the LR mix to the Matrix output, and then patch that Matrix output, as we did earlier, to USB. And what that means is you're concentrating on the left-right mix and what's coming through the system, and what's going to the Matrix is the same as that left-right mix, but it gives you the opportunity to add extra processing. So for a stream, you probably want to squash the sound a little bit. You want to add a little bit of compression just to get it into that pocket that's nice for streaming, just to optimize that. You can also put a limiter on there if you wanted, to make sure that you're not there's no kind of nasty surprises that cause distortion on the stream. But you can also EQ it, so you can EQ things slightly differently, and you've got the graphic EQs there, and the PEQs to be able to shape that sound just for the stream. So you could say there's a lot of low end that you've got going through the mix, and maybe you don't want that going off to the stream because it's just going to fire off all the compressors and just going to sound awful on whatever streaming service you're using. So you could use the PEQs for that. The other option is to use an aux out. So the best way, and you can do this as a single engineer as well, but this is quite good if you've got a secondary engineer maybe using an iPad and just sat there doing the separate mix. They've got their headphones on, they're just monitoring what's going out to the stream. I would say set up an aux, a post-fed aux, so post main fader aux. You can do it pre as well. So pre if it's completely separate and somebody's in a separate room with an iPad and headphones. But you could set up a post-fed aux, and then you can adjust the relative levels of things. So say you've got a guitar player in the room with a loud amp, you might want to put very little of that into the PA system in the room, but you might want to push that a little bit more in the stream. Or the biggest thing is having ambient mics. So you might have some ambient mics in the room. You definitely don't want to put those through a PA because you're going to get loads of feedback. So you can unassign them from the left-right mix. You can assign them to the aux mix, and then that gives you a kind of ambience for the stream. So there's a load of different ways to do it. We have done sessions on that before as well, so check those out. They're available. I think those ones are only on Facebook. But you can check out. I've go through in a bit more detail in that the pre-post thing and the setups. Andre's here. Hi Keith, hope you're well. I am well. I will be mixing an open air on the Q32 next Tuesday. Any tips, tricks, or traps an SQ user should be looking out for? Not really. They're very similar, Andre. They're very similar. The SQ really evolved from the Q, so in terms of workflow and stuff, they're pretty similar. Processing goes left to right instead of top to bottom. The processing there is very, very similar. You've got the gate PQ. The high pass filter you access from in the PQ screen. Don't know what things are there to watch out for. No, it's going to be pretty much the same. But obviously, give me a shout anytime if you have any questions or anything you want to try and do and maybe haven't worked out. Cool. How do you set up a wireless router? So, question from Samuel again. With how do you set up a wireless router to your Q32 so you can use an Android tablet with it to adjust sound live? Okay, so it's kind of a two-parter to that question. connecting up the wireless router is pretty straightforward. So most off-the-shelf routers these days will work. In the past, it wasn't always the case. But as long as you've got a router that can dish out DHCP, it's super, super simple. Let's go over here. So by default, if you go into Setup Control Network, by default, DHCP is enabled. So it's really just a case of connecting to the wireless router with your iPad, if you want to use the QPad app, or if you're using Android, like you mentioned, then using Mixing Station. So you connect that device up to the router. You plug the Q into the same router. Make sure you plug it into a LAN port, because both the device, the wireless device, and the Q are both clients on the network. So they're not kind of like leading the network in any way. The router's kind of in charge of all the communication, and these are just devices on the network, like having multiple computers on the network. So make sure you plug into the LAN port, not the WAN port. That's usually the black ones rather than the yellow ones on most off-the-shelf routers. And that pretty much should be it. Open up the app, you should be able to discover it. If you can't discover it and you need to, and this is sometimes happens with routers that have got firewalls, internal firewalls, then what you can do is name it here, or if you go to Utility, Diagnostics, and as long as it's connected, you'll have an IP address at the bottom here, and you can click on Other if you're using the QPad app, and you can connect directly to that IP address. So it's pretty much as easy as that. That's the most difficult thing. Like if it's all gone wrong, as long as you've got an address on the unit and you've connected the wireless device to the router, you should be good. Okay, on my Q24, channel 5 is about 20 dB quiet. So that's on Q24. Channel 5 is about 20 dB quieter than the other channels. So if you're using a expander, the obvious answer to that might be a pad is engaged. So if you've got an AR2412 or an AB168 or an AR84 connected, they all have 20 dB pads in them. And that's if you've just got a really hot line level signal that you're plugging into the XLR input. You can put a 20 dB pad in. If that's not the case, then give us a shout and we'll go through some troubleshooting with you. Trying to source it from somewhere else as well. I can't see any particular reason. It's probably best just to get in contact with us if it's not the pad thing, because I'm going through now like 4 or 5 different things, if it's in processing or just stuff that I don't want to go into too much detail here. Can I demonstrate setting up the limiter for a Matrix? Yes, I can. So let's go from having a left-right mix, maybe. So right, bunch of inputs. Left-right mix, beautiful. And I'm going to say, here's some inputs. I've got those ones linked, as you can see. So that's great. Bunch of signal is all going through to my left-right mix. Everyone's happy there. I've probably got the left-right mix turned down. I have. Oh, there we go. And now I've got that one selected. Go to routing, go to my matrix sends, and I want to send it to, let's just send it, for example, at 0 dB. And let's make sure that that's on. That's all good. Sends on. It's on post as well. So that means if I pull down my left-right mix in the room, I know that I've muted it in the matrix as well. Now I'm going to go back to my channel here, and you just need to select the channel. I should have explained I'm using a QPAC, so it might be slightly different to what you're using. But this channel screen that you see here is the equivalent of being on here and just pressing these select buttons and moving faders and changing pan and mutes and paffle. That's pretty much it. You can see there's all of that here just on a channel by channel basis. So where was I? Oh yeah, processing. Right, so I need to select the matrix. So I'd select that on the channel strip, and then I'll go to my processing, and then I'll go to my comp, and and you can use, there's different things you can use. I'm going to use a hard knee because I'm going to be limiting. Depending on what you like, you can use like the punch bag or the slow opto to make things softer, but I'm going to go peak in this case because I only want to catch the peaks. So I want to instantly make sure that that everything is squashed if it goes too loud. Then I'm going to leave my threshold at 0 dB because I am. You could actually put that up a little bit if you wanted to, because you've got, depending on what you're streaming to, you've actually got quite a bit of headroom there. So you might want to boost that a little bit. You also might want to push up the gain a little bit. We've got 18 dB of headroom in these going out to the USB, so you can actually push this up by 18 dB. So let's say we're going to push it up a little bit. And we're also going to push up the threshold a little bit. And then ratio, I could just put it on inf. Because if my left-right mix goes up to 2 dB now, it's just going to get shut off, basically. Attack-wise, I'm going to have that super fast. Again, with the peak and the attack, I'm going to have it super fast. It's not about shaping. It's not about letting transients through. It's just a functional limiter at this point. And release time, you might want to change that to taste. If you've got something that's very peaky, you're going to have it quite fast because it's only just going to catch just those tiny little peaks. If you've got something where it might go over for an extended period of time, you might not want it to sound pumpy, so you might want to extend the release time out a little bit. But that's about it. And then just make sure you switch it on. Okay, done. Cool. So I hope that helps. There's also a really good video by the Mix Wizard, Andrew Crawford, which you can find. I can't remember where you can find those now, but they're on YouTube. If you search Mix Wizard, he did some settings for streams using an SQ, but a similar thing applies. He's talking about how you can maybe boost some of the highs or have a nice little PEQ kind of setting that just makes everything sound clearer and nicer for people listening at home on their phones and whatnot. Cool. Okay, if you've got any more questions, do pop them in because I think we're almost going to wrap up. So it's your last chance. Umesh says hello. Hello, sir. Looks like they've got a live sound system. And Douglas Edwards is helping out as well. Thank you very much, Douglas. Thank you. It's good. I like that. It's good kind of logical fault finding and narrowing down of the issue, which is always good. Right, I'm going to scan back through quickly. So this is your last chance to see if I've missed anything. And if I have missed something that I don't see now, I will be doing another one of these in just a few weeks' time. So if there's anything that you think of in the meantime, feel free to pop along or send us a message. Or if you want anything featured, just let us know. More than happy. Oh. Is there any more? Any more? Oh, Ben's got a good question. That's a good question. If you turn it off while on the custom layer, does it boot up on that layer? No. So when the console boots up, it's always storing its current state, but the surface and what you're seeing is kind of separate from that. So I like to imagine the mixer as actually just being the DSP and stuff that's underlying, and you're moving around and you're kind of zooming in on one channel, controlling that channel, or you're looking at one mix and changing the sends to that mix. But all of it still exists under the hood. So all of that is stored. But when you switch it on, the surface needs to kind of reboot itself, if you like, and kind of work out where all the faders are and where they should be and things like that. So it does restart, and it will try to restart on the mono layer or the inputs layer. However, you can lock a user to the custom layer. So if you want to, you can just lock people down to the custom layer. I haven't done it for a while. I'm going to forget. It's in user. It's in. No, hang on, Keith. Hang on. It's in. I'm going to find it. I think it's in the user settings. for the basic user, permissions, banging. Yeah, like I say, I haven't used it for a while. If you go into the user settings, so home, user, basic here, you can have a channel strip access custom layer only, and you switch that on, just like that. So if you did want to lock somebody down to having just access to a couple of channels, you can do that in that screen. And that has caught me out a couple of times. Why am I in the custom layer? Cool. All right. One last one. I'm going to do this one. Oh, Klaus is here. Hello, Klaus. Will there be an update on QPad as the display? It's a little funky with the newer iPads. Yes, that is something that we are looking at because the new big iPad Pros work in a different way, and then the libraries were all off, and then something else went wrong. So yes, that is something that we are looking at and hope to have a solution for soon. It doesn't affect the operability of the app. It just does look a little bit funky, basically, like Davwinder says. Cool. Okay. Thank you very much for coming along and spending some time with me. It's always fun. If you do have any questions, like I say, you can always contact us at any time using support.alan-heath.com. You can also get in touch with your local distributor. They will be more than happy to help if, the time zones are completely out. Like I said earlier, I really never think about time zones because I'm rubbish like that. Hope to see you all again. Thank you very much. Take care. Be safe. Have fun. Go make lots of noise. Beautiful, beautiful noise. I know that's what I'll be doing this weekend, and I can't wait. Cheerio!